everybody, and welcome to our Friday Live reading series from Pulp Literature Press. I'm your host, Jen Lowndes, and we have three wonderful authors for you this morning. Before we get into that, I just wanted to send a message down to our friends in the United States who are protesting and putting their bodies on the line in the name of racial justice and social justice. Keep up the good fight, everybody. So let's bring our authors to the stage. We have, coming from the UK, Rebecca Ruth Gould. In center, we have Susan Peters, who is here in Vancouver, and then we have Michelle Barker, who is also here in Vancouver. Welcome, everybody.
Thank
you.
We'll
have three readings this morning. If you have any questions, please put them up in the chat on YouTube, and we have Mel backstage who is going to be reading those out for you. And then we will get our authors to answer, and if they don't get to your questions during their segment, they will get to them at the end of the show. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca Ruth Gould. She's an author of the poetry collection Cityscapes, which came out last year. Congratulations. And of the award-winning nonfiction work Writers and Rebels. Her short story Hands appears in Pulp Literature 25. And her translations of Persian poetry include High Tide of the Eyes, poems by Biana Lahi, 2019, and After Tomorrow the Days Disappear, Ghazals and Other Poems of Hassan's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this, Hassan Sisi of Delhi. And her fiction recently appeared in Lumber Mag and Cobalt Review. And I'll put her links up on the bottom after the show, and you can read her books there. So Rebecca, over to you.
Great, thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading from a short story that appeared in Pulp Literature called Hands, and I'll just briefly say that it is from a collection, unpublished collection of short stories called Strangers in Love, and the collection chronicles the lives of people who are changed by chance encounters. So I'll begin. Hands. What struck her most about him were his hands. They were long and lanky like his body. Even more remarkable than their shape was the way he used them. When they first met, he shook her hands boldly and directly, as if it were a perfectly normal thing to do and not a violation of the law in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Taken aback, she forgot to respond. Her hand hung limply in his palm until he dislodged it. Just the day prior, she had read about a poet who, after returning from abroad, had been arrested for shaking a woman's hand. She wanted to warn him, "You shouldn't do that. You might end up in jail." But he must have known what he was doing, she reasoned. And who was she to tell him how to behave in his own country? His hands didn't fit anywhere, not in his pockets or at his sides. They dangled oddly from his arms, like an expert swimmer, more at home in a lake than on dry land. The lines on his palms were long, stretching from his wrist to his index fingers. If a fortune teller, like the one she had consulted with in Hafez's tomb in Shiraz, had been asked to read his palms, she would have predicted for him a long life, a fulfilling marriage, and many children. His hands were like an autonomous body. She imagined them keeping her warm at night, soothing the aches in her back, providing a resting ground for her lips, caressing her hips. Before they said goodbye that magical night in Tehran, she asked him why he decided to shake her hand. Without answer, he waxed lyrical in a different direction. "I dream of working wonders with my hands," he said. "I want to become a perfumist. I want to make magic potions and aphrodisiacs based on ancient Iranian traditions." Although it was not an answer, it opened a new mysterious horizon onto his soul. She wanted to know more. She touched his hands again in Tbilisi, where they had arranged to rendezvous in order to get to know each other better. There in the Georgian Republic, They could say things about politics and to each other that could not be said so long as they were within the confines of the Islamic Republic. They could hold hands publicly without breaking the law. Funny, she thought, how law interacts with morality, indeed with honesty. What is licit in one country is suddenly an offense when the jurisdiction shifts. Strange how acts of affection, expressions of love, can be made a crime. Her hands pressed hard on his body. Certain parts of him yielded in certain ways, though not every crevice and not in every way. Her hands traced a continual arc on his back while they worked together, stimulating the flow of words, summoning and cementing memory. She saw his hands again in Abu Dhabi, but this time it was different. She was cautious. She wanted to see what his hands would do with her body when unprompted. Nearly all of their contact had been initiated by her hands in Tbilisi. This time, she decided, she would let his fingers determine their movements, would wait for his nails to dig into her skin and his thumbs to press into the small of her back. While she waited for him to touch her, she remembered when he shook her hands unbidden, in full public view, in violation of the law, in Tehran. Looking back on that moment, she wondered whether she had misread his apparent courage. Was it perhaps a performance, not for her sake, but for the state? An act of civil disobedience that dared the government to punish him? Hospitality demands that we shake the hands of every guest. His handshake seemed to say in retrospect, as he failed to touch her now that they were alone at last. We must pay our respects to every visitor. Or was she demeaning the miraculous moment? What force of gravity had caused him to extend his hand then and withdraw it now? Now that they were alone together for the second time in Abu Dhabi, his hands were more reticent than she had ever seen them in Tehran or Tbilisi. It was as if they belonged in another place, on another body, or in another galaxy. She decided she would wait until they said goodbye to question why his hands appeared to be tied down by a psychic force she could not fathom, and why they were so hesitant to touch her body. And then in the airport, there was a crush of people, as there always is. The lines extended out into the arrivals hall as the boarding time approached. 5:30, 5:35. The day was just beginning, yet it felt like the end of time. All passengers for Tehran, please approach gate 6D, the intercom blared. The moment to speak had passed. She had to touch his hands. She reached out to find them, but they were tucked deep inside his pockets, too deep for her to reach. The endless deferral of discussion, along with his unreachable hands that could have brought words to his lips, prevented them from breaching the most pressing question: when would their hands meet again? He asked her to watch his luggage while he went to the bathroom. When he returned, he had to rush to catch his flight. There was no time to say goodbye, no time to repeat the gestures that brought them together in Tehran and Tbilisi, no time for her to take the measure of his hands, to impress his knuckles on her memory, to lift his fingertips to her lips, and to tell him how much she wanted his hands, but actually the entirety of his body and of his soul in her life. Perhaps, she decided, the crush of people was the best way of deferring this impossible speech. Maybe silence was the preferred option. Not knowing what to say, in the little time remaining to them, she closed her eyes and imagined his fingers stroking her hair. When she opened her eyes, he was gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that wonderful reading. That is such a beautiful story. It's so intimate, and I mean it almost borders on erotica, and it's just about hands, and it's just it's so beautiful that you've managed to do that, to make us feel so intensely about something that in Western society we don't even think about.
Right. Thank you.
Mel had a question. Where do your story voices, like in Hands, come from? From people or from literature or drama?
I would say it's a combination. I mean, my life is in literature, a lot of it. So I would say it's always a combination. The books I read inspire me, especially from Islamic cultures, Iran. This is what I do professionally. I teach these literatures, but I also read these books as if it were part of my biography and part of my life. So it's been hard for me to draw the line between books and literature or books and people. I would say it's always a combination.
Nice. Well, stick around.
Absolutely.
And we'll bring you back at the end. And
Great.
Thank you for that. And
my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
And here comes Susan Peters on stage. So Susan Peters is one of the founding editors of Pulp Literature. You will find her stories in every of the first 25 issues of the magazine. She's also won many awards, including the Cedric Award for her creative nonfiction. She's won prizes for her fiction as well. She's been published in Analog and Tesseracts, and she's currently turning her pen from short fiction to novels. So this story she was going to read was the last story we had from her in Pulp Literature. We hope to have some again soon, but we're being patient while she writes her novel. So welcome, Sue.
Hi, this is Buddha in a bottle. The genie looked up at me, then looked at the bottle. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. I wasn't kidding. "You're supposed to fit, shrink or something." She pulled up at the corner of her silk pajama pants. "Laws of physics say you can't make something smaller than it is. Conservation of matter or something, unless it's a black hole." "Is it?" I lifted up the glass bottle. It was heavy purple glass, possibly leaded, but surely not heavy enough to be condensed matter. "What I suggest," the genie said, stroking a finger along my shoulder, "is that I come live with you." I remembered the day I'd found the bottle on the edge of the sea, partly covered by kelp, shining in the sun. I'd pulled the cork, thinking there would be wine inside, not a woman. How had she come out of there? There had been smoke. I'd been shocked, dropped the bottle. It had all been so sudden. She moved her finger to tap. 3 wishes? Never. I'd read all the stories. I knew better. "You've had a week of modern life. Isn't that enough?" "You can't condemn me to a bottle life. That's barbaric." "But it's where you belong," I said, moving away from her soft skin and incense-like perfume. I'd basically been her slave all week, driving her around the tourist hotspots. Vancouver doesn't have magical creatures, unless it's on a film set. She put her hand out towards the bottle as if she would grab it and smash it, but she shrank from actual contact. "I can't do it. Please release me from this curse." I looked at her tear-stained face. "But that's using a wish." She got on her knees. "Do it." "But that's changing the entire ecosystem. That's transferring power or negating power that will put the whole universe out of balance." She prostrated herself. "You have the power to free me." "What is freedom?" I pulled my feet from her grasp, forcing her to release my made-in-China running shoes. They were a luxury commodity constructed by people who had enslaved themselves to the dream, workers who put up with extreme factory conditions in order to have a better life for their children, while the company executives took the profits to build their own dreams of big houses and offshore tax haven investments. Even I had bought my shoes from my own personal dreams of being fit, to have knees without pain when I ran, to look cool. These same shoes I had worn last week when I walked on the beach and found the bottle. Dreams are funny things, I said. They're never what you expect. Never really what you wanted. She could tell I had made my mind up. She got up. She was going to run away, as if running could save her now. I wish, I pronounced loudly and took a deep breath as she halted her flight. I double wish. I triple wish. She turned to me, fear and perhaps even horror on her face, for she had spent a week with me and knew my habits. I forever wish that I never wish for anything more again. She started laughing then. She laughed until she cried. I couldn't understand it. Are you okay? Aren't you going to grant me my request? You solved it, she sputtered. I did? Am I like Spock now? Quite the opposite, you idiot, she laughed. She took the bottle and tossed it in the gray recycling bin that was part of every park's zero garbage initiative. Are you free? I asked, perplexed. More than free, she said. So are you. But I can't wish you free, I said. The bottle wasn't my cage, she said. The wishes were. Oh, I said. Oh. She embraced me fully and freely. No games, no toying with my ear. I'd love some sushi right now. Want some? Sure, I said. That would be not what I wished for, but bonus, she said. I took her outstretched hand. Yes, bonus.
Thank you, Sue. I do love that story. And for our listeners out there, the sound froze for about one sentence. So if you want to read what that sentence was, you will have to pick up the issue. I'm sorry. But every single one of Sue's sentences are important, so you don't want to miss out that one. So got a question here. You've written lots of great short fiction and a couple of excellent novels. How is the process, I guess, between short fiction and novels different for you?
It's like the difference between babysitting and having a child.
That's a great way of putting it. I've never thought of that. So that said, which do you enjoy more?
I've not published one of my novels, so I can't tell you how the end result would make me satisfied for the amount of work that goes into the novel. It's very gratifying to publish a short story and have it finished and not think about it again.
Yeah, I guess you have to wait till the children grow up to make a judgment on the end result when you're the parent of a novel. So, well, we're looking forward to your novels being published because Mel and I have heard parts of them, and I can't wait to read them and cover it. So I am going to bring our last guest on now. So stick around, Sue. We'll bring you back at the end. And now we've got Michelle Barker on. So Michelle is also a Vancouver author. She's the author of The House of 1,000 Eyes, which was named a Kirkus Best Book of 2018 and has won numerous other awards, including the Amy Mather's Teen Book Award. Her newest novel is My Long List of Impossible Things, and it was released by Annick Press this spring, so congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you.
And the story we published was MVP, and it was the winner of the 2017 Surrey International Writers Conference Storyteller Award. We published it in issue 18. Michelle holds an MFA in creative writing from UBC. She works as a senior editor at the Darling Axe, and she's represented by Westwood Creative Artists. And we will put her links up under the YouTube video when it comes out. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to read from MVP, and I'm not going to start at the beginning, so I'll just give you a little bit of information about what's going on. The story is about two doctors named Aaron Weisberg and Jeff Goldstein, and it takes place on the Jewish Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. So these two doctors work at the same hospital together, and they're friends, sort of. Aaron is actually a bit jealous of Goldstein. Goldstein never seems to do anything wrong, and the nurses have all nicknamed him Rabbi. And no one would call Aaron Rabbi unless they meant a rabbi who was cheating on his wife. So they go to synagogue with their families on Yom Kippur, and they accidentally take home each other's jackets. So Aaron decides he's going to check the pockets of Goldstein's jacket, and he comes upon something unexpected. What was this? I pulled out a plastic bag with a small amount of white powder in it. I put the bag back in the pocket, took it out again, opened it, and sniffed. But what did I know? It wasn't sugar, and I was betting it wasn't flour or baking powder either. I should never have looked, that's what. What I could do was pretend not to know. I hadn't looked. Here's your jacket back, buddy. Didn't even check the pockets. Not that I would. I mean, what does the rabbi have to hide? All those deep knee bends in shul this morning. Shit. I'd always thought it would be so great to have some dirt on Goldstein. Something I could whisper to the nurses. Or even something I could just know by myself. Like one of those sour candies you can suck on for hours. Now what? Goldstein would want his jacket back. Did I say anything about the bag? Of course not. The pocket had been zipped. Admitting I'd unzipped it and looked meant telling the guy I was interested in his secrets, which I was, and looking for a way to sewer him, which I thought I was, but wasn't. What was the right thing to do? Goldstein and I weren't good enough friends to have a heart-to-heart about this. We were more like rivals, but not real rivals. Not rivals like an anonymous call to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I could never do that. Only there was a part of me that was maybe a little satisfied. Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein had something to atone for, after all. I stuffed the bag back into the pocket and zipped it shut, put the jacket on, and called up the stairs. I'm going out for a bit. Got into my car and drove to Hannah's, which was a totally inappropriate place to be on Yom Kippur. But whatever. God already knew I wasn't sorry for sleeping with my sister's best friend. A cigarette smoldered on the kitchen table next to Hannah's notebook and pen. She wrote her first drafts in longhand, which meant she was in the middle of a first draft, which meant she didn't want to see me, not now. She narrowed her eyes. That's not your jacket. I know. I unzipped the pocket and pulled out the baggie. Can you tell me what this is? My nerdy teenage years flashed past me. While everyone else had been out getting high, I'd been memorizing Yoda's dialogue from The Empire Strikes Back. Hannah raised one pierced eyebrow. Gee, Aaron, wait. Is it cocaine? She took the baggie out of my hand, licked the tip of her pinky, and dipped it in, touched the powder to her tongue, and smiled. Are we taking a walk on the wild side, Dr. Weisberg? Don't be ridiculous, it's not mine. That's what I used to say to my Aunt Judy. I told her what had happened. What do I do? She had that smile on her face, like something was really funny to her. Only I knew from experience I wouldn't find it funny at all. You make a big deal out of shit, you know that? She said. This is a big deal. The guy's a plastic surgeon, Hannah. He operates on kids. She shrugged. Look, either leave it in the pocket and say nothing, or keep it and see what he does. Option A is boring, but safe. It won't get you into any trouble. Option B would be more fun, but you're the one who has to work with him. Does he have a sense of humor? About this? I was guessing no. I stuffed the baggie back into the pocket, then left the jacket on the chair and went to use Hannah's bathroom. By the time I came out again, I had made my decision. Option A. Door number 1, as it would have been called on the game shows my mother used to watch, The Price is Right or something. Sometimes you got lucky, and it was a fancy car or a great vacation behind the door. Sometimes you didn't, and the door opened, and there was a goat standing there tethered on the stage with its creepy eyes, looking around like, what the fuck am I doing on this television show? You didn't even get to take the goat home. I had a pretty good idea of what was behind door number 1 in this case, the hospital where Goldstein and I worked. Medicine was a small world, and making enemies was never a good idea. I'd pretend not to know about the cocaine and hope Goldstein didn't do anything profoundly stupid or dangerous at work. And if it was one of my boys the rabbi was operating on? All right. Maybe I didn't completely know what was behind door number 1, but it was better than the alternative.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a great reading.
Oh, thank you.
And it works really well reading from the middle like that. So for those of you who haven't read this, it is out in issue 18, which is available from our bookstore. So you can hear the beginning and the end of it, or read the beginning and the end of it for yourselves. So Mel says, a delicious sense of danger in your story and a great inner voice. Do you write your novels in first person or third person?
I do both, actually. My long list of impossible things is written in first person. The House of 1,000 Eyes is in third. And I have to actually say, I think I prefer third. I mean, there's not a huge difference in terms of how close you are to the narrator, but somehow third feels just a little bit more natural than first does. So I feel it feels a little bit different to me when I'm writing it. So.
Yeah, it is a different feeling. I write in both as well. And I wanted to ask, how did this story come to you? Like, what was the inspiration for it? Or is that too personal?
No, it's not personal at all. I mean, I wrote it quite a long time ago. I was writing a series of connected stories at that time. And so Aaron was a character that I'd actually gotten to know quite well. And I sort of wrote the story as an experiment because I was thinking about structure in the novel and thinking about, always making the worst thing happen. And I thought, well, I'm going to try and write a story that just keeps on making the worst thing happen. And I don't know. To be honest, that's as much of the idea as I remember. I don't know where the rest of it came from. It just sort of popped into my mind. So.
Well, you certainly succeeded in that. I remember the first time I read it after it won the contest, and I'm like, oh no. That's like the rest of the story.
Good. That was the reaction I was hoping for.
So let me bring our other authors back on stage now. We're almost out of time. So I want to ask the question that I ask from everybody. What are you working on now? So let's start with Rebecca Ruth Gould.
Well, I'm finishing the collection that I mentioned. There's 9 stories. I guess we're all have many different projects at once. I am just beginning a novel called Revolutionary Love that's set at the time of the Iranian Revolution. So that's very early, though.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
I want to read that.
Exciting to write. I want to write it.
And Susan, I've let the cat out of the bag that you are writing novels, but do you want to talk a little bit about what you're writing?
I'm trying to write the story of the most beautiful woman in the world who marries the most powerful king in the world who has PTSD.
And are you going to tell us any more than that, or is that just the secret?
It's the story of Esther. So, yeah, that's all.
That's a great way of describing it. Most beautiful woman in the world marries the king with PTSD. And Michelle, what's next on your list?
Oh, well, I'm actually shifting gears a little bit because I had been writing a lot about Germany and writing YA, but I'm now writing a novel for adults. It's a dystopian thriller called The Ministry of Sleep, and it's set in Canada about 50 years from now, after environmental disaster and disease have ravaged the world. The government has put a sleep program in place so that at any time, half the population is sleeping in these sleep chambers that are buried, deep in the bowels of the earth. So yeah, that's where my mind is right now.
That is fascinating, and that is a great title too.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you all for being our guests today. It's always wonderful to see you, if not in person, at least see your faces on the screen and hear you read. I always love hearing stories read by their authors. So stay safe out there. Have a wonderful week. And to our audience, we will see you next week with Alex Reese-Abbott, Emily Osborne, and Epiphany Farrell. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for having us.